Gentlemen, how about a OG good old tank update this week? Hey, what's up reefers? Recently we have really been focusing on the 135-gallon mixed reef downstairs and really have been neglecting this 17-gallon macroalgae mangrove tank. So I figured this week maybe a nice little update on this little tank. Like I mentioned before, recently I've been focusing on the 135-gallon tank a lot. So for this tank, it has pretty much been on autopilot, except I started dosing a little bit of trace elements. These are some of the elements that I got from the Reef Moonshiners method I've been doing on the 135-gallon tank for the past 4 or 5 weeks. I have not talked about that regimen at all because I really want to get more experience first before I give my opinion on it. But there are also certain elements that I brought over and started dosing to this tank daily. The general maintenance for this tank has not really changed. I'm still doing water change every 2 to 3 weeks. I continue to dose Cheddar Grow once in a while, as well as nitrates and also magnesium for the mangrove, as well as some of the possibly macroalgae. For this tank, you'll notice that the light is a little bit warmer than the mixed reef downstairs, and I kind of like it this way for like a soft coral macroalgae tank. It just feels a little bit more natural. I know it's kind of like an acquired taste for a lot of people. These days, people seem to really prefer a really blue and fluorescent tank. To be honest, I kind of like this more natural look, and I feel like this natural look, certain corals actually show up a little bit better. For example, the Gorgonians and Xenia, they really looks nice under white light versus just standard blue. Same thing with other softies like this. I feel like they look a lot better under white lights. And a lot of people ask me what softie this is. This is just like a run-of-the-mill finger lighter. And honestly, I don't know like if there's any specific name for this, but this is one of these guys that you kind of go into a fish store, you look at it, it's like, okay, cool, and you walk by it. But if you give them a chance and give them really an environment that they'll thrive in, you can totally become a centerpiece of a reef tank. Just look at this, and especially the motion it gives off when it's hit by the right flow. And flow is actually one of those things that I have started tweaking in both tanks a little bit more these days. One thing I noticed is that when this leather is not getting the proper flow that it wants, the polyp extension kind of sucks, and then the whole coral just look kind of blah. But when you give it nice flow like this, for example, just right in front of the power head like this, you see the polyp becomes really extended. It looks almost like hair, and it gives a really nice texture to the whole coral. So flow is tremendously important. And one other coral that I'm still experimenting with flow with is the Xenia here. The common suggestions for Xenia is that if you want to see the awesome pulsing action like you see here, people actually recommend little to almost no flow for the Xenias, because the Xenia supposedly pulse in order to move the water through its polyps tentacles in order to capture the nutrients. So if there's enough water movement, they don't need to pulse as much, versus if there's no water movement, then the polyp will pulse in order to move the water through its tentacle in order to capture the nutrients. So in my case, I do like to see a nice flow in the tank in order to see like the corals and stuff like that move, but at the same time, I don't want to really impede the Xenias from pulsing because I really like the action. So I think right now we may have a decent compromise where we have enough flow for the tank, and the Xenia still did not get enough flow where it does not need to pulse. It'll still pulse, you still see the pulsing action, but we still get the nice gentle motion from the corals. Speaking of soft corals, check out this Japanese pink Neptheas. This is kind of like my pride and joy in this tank. I got this from Lynn, as well as this lemon yellow Neptheas as well. The unique thing about this Nepthea is that, number one, of course, they originated from Japan, and that's always a special place in my heart because I love the country. But number two, if you look at the trunk, you see some really nice details, some texture on the trunk that is unique to this type of coral. So it looks really cool and has grown tremendously. I do have a small frag of the Japanese pink Neptheas ready to go right here, and that is already reserved for Daniel in New York. I've been talking about getting this coral to him for a long time, but of course COVID shut everything down. So I'm cautiously optimistic that at some point this year, I will finally be able to deliver that coral to him, maybe in person at one of the shows. Since we're looking at this chunk right here, this is the blue Xenia, so that was being picked at by the filefish before I rehomed the filefish, and as you can see, it has pretty much made a full recovery. I feel like I'm still missing a couple limbs, but it has really grown back really nicely. This coral is unique because based on the angle you look at this this coral right here, it actually gives off a really nice velvety blue coloration versus just like a standard pink. That is usually most apparent when we look from top down, but of course we got the surface agitation going on right now. So maybe we'll do that a little bit later. In terms of corals, the outer toadstool from Joseph is looking beautiful. These are the white polyp toadstool. I used to have a really nice chunky colony as well. And once they get to a certain size, it's just like a field of white. It looks absolutely gorgeous. So I can't wait for this guy to grow out. I will probably move one of these guys into the high flow area to the tank downstairs because really, you gotta appreciate them under a nice current. Sticking to leather, I have two weeping willow right here. One is the Japanese one with the green tentacles. One is the Remy Bahama Llamas ones. Unfortunately, they closed right now. The green one consistently open for me, but because the light just got turned on, it's not really peeking out yet. I'll try to grab a shot later on in this video. The one from Remy though, it has been kind of closed up for the last week or two, but again, leather does that. They'll kind of like shed this mucus and it'll pop back out again. So I may need to move this guy to a higher flow area. I got a couple mushroom corals in this tank, like those ones right there, and this one. This is like a pine wheel one I got from Lynn, and this actually got really nice details. In terms of coloration, this coral is not as colorful as some of the other corals out there on the market, but in terms of details, this coral is amazing. Wrapping up with corals, in terms of zoas, there's not many zoas in this tank. Some of these zoa frags was picked pretty clean by the fish before it left, but as you can see, they have started multiplying already. And if you look back there, we'll see the Space Invader Pectinia. I moved this guy maybe 2.5 months ago from the mixed reef to here because it was starting to recede and showing quite a bit of skeleton. And it has made a full recovery and doing fantastic and growing these new eyes. I really like this environment here. I'm just going to keep this coral here for a little bit longer because it seems really happy here. And I think maybe in 2 or 3 months, I may be able to pull frags from Space Invader because I can see like one clear skeleton growth right there that can easily lop off, and maybe this one right here that can easily lop off as well. And with those frags, I can probably start new colonies in the mixed reef as well. This way I don't have all my eggs in one basket. And speaking of all the eggs in one basket, I do have all my kryptonite candy cane here. That little bunch right there was doing really bad in the mixed reef a couple months ago. Brought them in this tank. It has also since recovered and also splitting and creating new heads. So I think I may be able to move that back down really soon. And in this frame, you may have seen the Christmas tree worm rock right there. It's interesting because while the filefish is around, I noticed the worms are not as extended, like they hide a lot more often. Now with the filefish gone, I noticed that the Christmas tree worm seems to be extended all the time again. So this may be a side benefit of rehoming the filefish. It was probably predating on a lot of things in this tank that I did not know about. Gorgonian continues to do well in this tank. I was hoping these vertical branch would grow a little bit faster, but it looks like this one branch grew well and then started spreading out here. But that is really not the look that I'm looking for. So I think I may lop off this branch and hope that these guys will grow a little bit faster. Same deal with this. There's just like a random branch growing out this way. Most likely I'll just kind of lop this off and lop that off. One thing I want to note is also I added one ammo crab from Reef cleaners into this tank. I see I have like 1 to 2 big chunk of bubble algae. Last week I noticed a couple smaller bubble algae that's coming in on these red mackerel right here, but it seems like the ammo crab may have taken care of it because I cannot think of anything else in this tank that would eat bubble algae, so I attribute that to the ammo crab. And the one I got here is a small little guy like this. Macro algae wise, I feel like we hit kind of like a plateau. It did not have that explosive growth that I was having like 2 months ago. The Prolifias is doing well. It came all the way to the front. It looks almost like one single runner that just wrapped around the rock to the front, so it's kind of cool to see. The palm tree macro is doing decent. Usually I only get like one shoot, right? It's like one die off, another shoot will come out, one die off, another shoot come out, so that is nothing new. The red branching macro did not grow as much as in the past. Same thing with the high portion of high here, another portion right here. I mean, they're doing well. Coloration is decent, but they did not grow as much as they did earlier this year. So it could be something about nutrient competition between the corals, the macroalgae, and the mangrove, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But for now, the macroalgae in this tank is definitely taking a back seat compared to the soft coral, which have absolutely exploded in growth in this past month. Fish-wise, we have one Banggai Cardinal in this tank. I had 2, but one of them kind of disappeared maybe like a month and a half ago. It just one day disappeared. I did not find the body. That's usually what happens in a reef tank when a fish kind of disappeared. It disappeared. I checked behind the stand, checked behind the floor, checked behind the little overflow box, no body. So I assumed that maybe the ammo crab or something else just clean up the body. But right now I have one lonely Banggai Cardinals. This guy is not really eating prepared foods. I feed the tank with frozen mysis and frozen LLS every 2 days or so. And this guy just gorged himself. It's kind of weird because the Banggai that disappeared is actually the one that eats flake food, which I do feed the tank every day in like tiny pieces. And that guy also eats frozen mysis. So it's kind of weird how that one disappeared, but this one's doing fine. My plan is to possibly get 1 or 2 more Banggai Cardinal to see if any one of them will pair up, and then we'll rehome the odd man out. And if this round of pairing does not work, I'm really thinking about just moving the Banggais to the mixed reef and just keep like a damsel or something like that in this tank to bring some color. I've been oddly attracted to damsel fish recently. Seems appropriate for the inappropriate reefer. So if I do kind of swap out the cardinal fish, I may go with maybe 1 or 2 damsel fish. Maybe the coupon damsel, that's a blue one with the yellow belly and yellow tail. Those looks gorgeous. But like I mentioned, I'll probably try introducing another Banggai Cardinal or 2 before we move on to something else. So in terms of damsel fish selection, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But hopefully we'll end up with a pair of Banggai Cardinal. That'd be amazing. All right, let's talk about the mangrove tree. Alexa, turn on grow light. For the mangrove, a while back, I installed this light panel that costed a pretty penny. I think it's like 120 or 130 bucks. It's specifically for plants. This is not like a aquarium light, it's like a plant's light, and I don't know what people are growing under it, but it works. The mangrove tree has been doing beautifully, as you can see with the foliage right here. From this end, it looks beautiful. I do wish I had this kind of density on this side as well. For the most part, the leaves more towards that side of the tank, which is understandable because I do have the window right here and the light panel is kind of like on this side as well. But recently I've been doing a little bit of trimming. There was a branch coming out this way that looks kind of odd, so I kind of trimmed it off over here, and it looks like the cut has been sealed and healed over. It appears quite a few of people that consume my contents also into plants as well, so they're giving me tips about how to trim plants in order to encourage the hormones to go to other parts of the plant's body, which is really interesting. My goal is to kind of fill this portion out if possible. I'm hoping that by trimming this, it will encourage the growth of these parts right here. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I trimmed it maybe a month and a half ago, so it'll take a little time. But besides that, I think the mangrove tree looks good. We still get like new shoots coming out, like right here. These are all new, so that's fantastic to see. In case you're curious, I'm also sprouting a few of these pods right here in the back chamber of this tank. Sometimes I get a message asking like how long does it take for the leaves to grow, but because a lot of times people have the pods and it seems like not doing anything, and I'll tell you, it seems to take a long time for me as well. So if you look back here, all these has been rooted, meaning that I got these as pods, and these roots are all new, and it has been almost half a year at this point. And while the root structure has been fantastic, in terms of leaves, that's all I got. So it seems like they do take a while. One general tip is that mangrove do grow better in fresh water. So if I were to do it again, and if I really want things to grow fast, maybe I'll sprout the pod in fresh water first, and then we'll slowly transition the mangrove to salt water. Again, you have to slowly acclimate the mangrove to salt water, maybe in the span of 2 or 3 weeks. You cannot just drop it in salt water, you can shock them. But if you need to move the mangrove, maybe a mangrove with damaged roots from salt water to fresh water, you can drop it directly into fresh water with the acclimation. It does seem to take a while for the pod to really start going. And this guy right here, if you're curious, when I got it, this is about 3 years old. At this point, it's probably like 4.5 years old plant. And this is kind of what you're looking at in terms of like a 4 or 5 years old plant that has strictly been grown in salt water. All right guys, so this is a quick update on the 17-gallon mangrove macroalgae tank. I know it has been a hot minute since we talked about this tank, so I figured it would be nice to kind of give an update. And also, I got a couple developing stories on the big mixed reef downstairs. That's why I kind of want to hold off sharing too much about it before I can finish those arcs. This includes turning the CO2 scrubber into a recirculating CO2 scrubber, as well as testing out the Reef Moonshiners method of dosing trace elements. I just realized I forgot to put the black background behind the tank so that things will stand out a little bit more, but hey, I feel like it still looks okay. And I did not talk about the OG bounce mushroom that is kind of hanging on right there. I'll probably move that mushroom to the mixed reef because it's not too happy in here, but yeah. And that is kind of like the benefits of having multiple systems. One coral is not happy in this system, maybe it'll like the second system a little bit more. All right guys, I'll see you guys next Sunday at 12:30 p.m. sharp. Bye. Okay. What are you doing?